afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of the Middle East and Africa Forum for Sustainability Leaders podcast. This week, we're looking at sustainability leaders marching forward. What are the priorities for sustainability professionals in the near term as they look to embed the sustainability strategies inside the new emerging verticals, inside the new organizational charts that are changing in every company and every institution, whether you're a government ministry, whether you're a private sector company. Organizational charts are changing all over the world, all across the Middle East and Africa, in order to accommodate this new vertical of sustainability leaders. And it gives me great pleasure to be having this week's discussion with Vijay Bains, Group Head of Environment, Social and Governance at Emirates MBD Bank. Welcome, Vijay.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's a great pleasure to be with Gulf Intelligence again and with your listeners and viewers as well.
Appreciate that. I wanted to start a little bit of sort of wind back the clock a little bit anecdotally, maybe even it predates your arrival at the bank, but how was the need for a CSO, a Chief Sustainability Officer, your group head for ESG, and everybody has a kind of a different name for this ultimately senior level position. But how was it, when was it first identified within Emirates MBD as something that we need to really carve out rather than it be an adjunct to someone else's day job?
Sean, a really great question. So we've been on the sustainability journey for, I think, 6 to 10 years now. So we've had ESG and sustainability in a lot of functions within risk, compliance. Our banking teams have been doing sustainability linked loans for many years, but it emerged as a kind of key theme 24 months ago, and it came directly from our EXCO. So
and that is EXCO, that terrible acronym, or whatever that.
Yeah, you're right.
Beware the overuse of acronyms.
You're quite right. Executive committee, and it came directly from our CEO, Shane.
Good.
And that's my reporting line as Chief Sustainability Officer and Group Head of ESG, Environment, Social Governance, as I report directly to Shane. And his view and the executive committee's view and the board's view is ESG is a golden thread throughout all of our business lines, but there is a need for a specialized business unit to drive our strategy forward. And what we do to support our clients, and also to ensure we walk the walk and talk the talk.
When you say golden thread, what does that mean exactly?
Sure. So there's a few areas that are driving ESG for us. The first one is customer interest in sustainability is fantastic. And I think we've seen the drive towards electric cars and electric vehicles. We've seen the need for greener buildings as well. We've also seen the greater need to align to net zero goals as well. And part of my functions role is to translate a lot of those drivers from regulators, from customers and clients, and develop our strategy and make sure we're supporting them on sustainable bonds, climate bonds, but also green financing products. But also that we also make net zero commitments in line with national priorities as well, and they're meaningful commitments as well.
So you essentially have kind of a dual mandate, if you like, the overarching strategy to net zero, to decarbonization, which is both a company, a sector, and an economy priority. The UAE has identified 2050 as the net zero, but at the same token, the second strand being the bottom line, the commercial opportunity that is presented in the alignment with the green economy. Just to rewind a little bit, Vijay, what was the bank structure before 24 months? Was sustainability ESG or CSR, or where did you park that activity previously and migrated from where to where, so to speak?
Yeah, it's very common in a lot of organizations. We had a CSR function, which was in our marketing team, a marketing function. And the driver behind that was, and we have a great focus on the S and the G side, the social and the governance elements as well, and a great corporate social responsibility team as well. So it was parked within CSR. CSR has now been included within the overarching ESG structure. And as part of our kind of leadership briefs as well, CSR and the leadership had CSR responsibilities as well. And we're seeing ESG as that evolution of CSR, but also as a financial opportunity for us as well.
With a direct report to the CEO, obviously you are amongst a whole suite of C-level positions, whether the CFO or the chief strategy officer and the many other sector heads, I'm sure, within a successful bank like Emirates MBD. But where does your role play in upgrading all of your peer colleagues at the C-suite into being, if you like, little chief sustainability officers themselves, so that they can cascade that down their verticals within the organizational chart? How do you coexist? Would you align or hold them even to account in terms of the standards?
It's a great question, and it's one that often comes up as well. And I think for me, they are my biggest evangelists and supporters across the bank, and they support and translate actually, what we're talking at executive committee into, say, the financial responsibility or the carbon accounting, or actually what it means to HR, or what it means to our procurement and our green supply chain. So part of my role in the last 6 months has been really helping to further upskill the board of real current headwinds and trends that we're seeing in the market. Also, our own strategy as well, and what it means for their own verticals as well, because I think the knowledge around ESG and sustainability is already quite mature in the bank. And I was very fortunate in that.
In your bank or in banks in general, are you saying?
I think within EMBD, it was definitely very mature. And I think the great thing about sustainability, Sean, you can have a coffee with almost anyone, and everyone's got a view on some element as well. So I find often we have some great sessions, and then we have some great coffees and lunches within the bank as well, and the conversations kind of carry on as well.
But when you think of your background, you were previously, if you like, on the other side of the table with KPMG as an advisor into the financial sector in getting their house in order and the opportunity, the economic opportunity in the UK. How would you compare, I mean, from the point of view of geographic regions and the maturity of the finance sector here versus, let's say, the City of London? Are we up to speed? Are we getting there? Are we leading? Where do you see the sort of comparisons, if you like?
So I think there's 3 key areas. I think there's a regulatory framework that the UE is developing, and very common to countries that host COP. A COP is seen as a driving force as well, and we're having great dialogue with the central bank, with the Ministry of Climate on a standardized regulatory framework that we as banks can also support our clients on their net zero journeys as well. And I think that's very mature. And, the central bank has been speaking to other central banks in Europe, as well as the Bank of England as well, around lessons learned as well. And there are quite a few.
Is it important that these regionals that their standardization is aligned in order so we don't have multiple kind of regulatory frameworks that institutions have to comply with, standardization across the world?
Sean, yes, yeah, hugely important for us. And, with my previous hat within KPMG, it was, was one of my roles of translating the regulatory alphabet soup of ESG. And I won't go into all the acronyms for your watchers or listeners here, but, there are a number, and ESG regulations are up by 60% in 2 years. Now, that's wonderful if you're on an advisory side or legal side. If you are a financial services organization such as ourselves, that's quite a bit to translate and to understand as well. But, we have seen that really great dialogue between regulatory making bodies. We have seen a lot of lessons learned as well. The central bank is also publishing their own UAE taxonomy as well of what's a green product, what's a service. And I think we've seen a lot of that greenwashing themes as well hit a lot of European capitals and America as well. And I think, for me, the UE is taking a really pragmatic approach here as well to say we're going to listen to industry and other stakeholders here as well.
You said that there was one of 3, the regulatory piece. Yep. I interrupted you. The other 2.
The other 2 really are the maturity of the market. And I'll give an example. So 10% of debt capital market flows are now sustainability linked. That's very similar to where the EU was 5 years ago. The EU is now about 50%. And that's the trends we're seeing and the headwinds we're seeing in the UAE GCC market. So more and more of our clients are wanting to get sustainability linked products, green sukuks, green financial products, sustainability linked loans as well. And we're seeing that similar headwind as well. And that's driving a lot of activity for us and our clients. And the final one is just the great appetite for learning and sharing as well. I've worked in banking for 20 years now. I've never seen such a great openness amongst banks and clients talking about actually the need for strategies, the need for harmonized regulations, and also supporting the journey to net zero as well. And that's really, really fantastic.
When it comes to standardization, obviously, across the sector, the geographies, as you say, central bank, but also I'm interested in your view on the job positions and the standardization of clarity there. In your institution, you're the group head of ESG, reporting directly to the CEO. But other places have the same title or same position, and it seems to be emerging as the standard title, the CSO, the Chief Sustainability Officer. Now, everybody knows, even my 10-year-old kid, if I say CFO, they nearly could tell me what that is. But I say CSO, they don't, or the group head of this or the SVP of that. How important is it within an institution, within the industry, to standardize the actual job positions, which we're now very familiar with on the financial vertical, CFO, treasurer, and so on, but less so in this space? That is important that we get consistency there, or not? Is it not important?
No, I think it is important. I think it definitely is important. I wear the Chief Sustainability Officer hat for the bank, as well as a group head. And for us, group head is because we own other businesses as well. So actually, we feed and lines into those different business units. But we have seen the Chief Sustainability Officer really emerge as a term in the last 36 months. I'm on the World Economic Forum panel as well, having defined what the CSO means, what the strategy means, what the responsibilities, what the links are to CFO, head of internal audit, all of chief risk officer, and translating that. So hopefully, as your son grows up as well, this will become a term he becomes familiar with, and a lot of us become more familiar with,
and
as
a
well.
job that he or she may aspire to seek out, in the way that other jobs are identifiable to young teenagers as they're leaving school. I wanted to talk a little bit take that forward in the context of the organization, and the essence. You started out your story of the CEO of Emirates MBD seeing the need to create this vertical, this position that you're now holding, and that's obviously from a top-down point of view. I'm wondering, as you look at other large organizations who are starting this journey, who may not be as an advanced state or as mature a state as Emirates MBD, or even the financial sector, which tends to be more advanced because they've always had serious obligations to compliance on multiple levels around risk and so forth. But the idea of this a structural that you would advise bigger, and particularly in this region where we some very large family offices and holding companies who may be coming to this area for the first time and may need to accelerate their adoption, because we're increasingly seeing regional stock markets start to require certain standards be met alongside sustainability and ESG.
I think my advice is to look at actually what's known as a material assessment. So your own strategy, and whether you have your own sustainability strategy. I always start at the first point, which is, what are your regulatory obligations in your countries or industries? And I'll give you an example. For us as a bank, there are 118 ESG regulations. Next year, that will no doubt increase as well. And I think
180 which?
118 different sustainability regulations in the market as well.
Of your own, or that you have to adopt?
That we have to have a look at and analyze, because a lot of them, Sean, are flipping almost on a monthly basis from optional to mandatory as well.
Okay.
So that's my biggest piece of advice and lesson learned from being in the industry for many years and working in sustainability. Have a look at regulations first, because that will also inform your strategy as well. Also look at your own obligations as well. I think there are a large number of different bodies to join as well for sustainability and around setting up sustainable goals. I would say, first of all, make an assessment of your own priorities and set up your own sustainability strategy linked to your board and your corporate priorities as well. And be circumspect of what you're going to select and what you're going to join as well. We've seen a few reputational risk issues happen in the market as well of organizations joining bodies and then having to leave them as well. And I think my final lesson is really get everyone involved as well from all levels.
I was just going to come to that point. We did a similar interview with a chief sustainability officer of another very large regional company, and his advice was, as they have done, is that they've kept the CSO, the chief sustainable officer's vertical and division quite slim, with only a handful of actual staff within that department, because the critical focus for them was that all 20 plus thousand of their employees have an obligation, have a requirement to adopt and be responsible for sustainability implementation strategies, etc. Your thoughts on that, where those two meet, the top down, your position came from the CEO versus the bottom up, and how do you bring those two together?
Yeah, Sean, I think it's a very similar approach for ourselves as well. So, I'm asked the question often, how many people are on your team? And, we've got thousands of employees. As I said, each one of them will have ESG responsibilities and been on this journey as well. So we've got mandatory learning and training coming out, which our employees are actually asking for to understand sustainability in our strategy. And that's going to be mandated. We've also got guided learning paths for key roles as well. And similar to the other organisation you mentioned as well, we've got a niche, a strategic team, setting our goals, setting our strategy, but also advising our clients on financial products. But we've also got our other business lines that have been on this learning journey for a few years, advising our clients as well. And I think where we were a few years ago, where chief sustainability officers had quite large functions to kind of grow this out. Actually, what we've said is we're going to build this out into everyone's job roles and responsibilities. And, the link to sustainability, the drive to net zero is across all of our country operations and all of our business lines. Therefore, it's all of our responsibilities, and everyone is a CSO in their own right.
And I suppose it must help, or at least perhaps it serves this dual mandate role we started out our conversation on, and for the institution as a whole, where it is a economic opportunity. You're a bank. The idea, the opportunity of green bonds or other types of products that you can provide to your clients and obviously make a return economically, that there is a huge economic opportunity here, obviously in your bank, but across other sectors too, that destination, that bottom line opportunity really does offer a very useful North Star in terms of adoption.
Most definitely. And I think, for us as bankers, we look at risk appetite and then we look at profit centers as well. And, integrating sustainability, and we have been on a journey for an ESG risk management has happened over many years. But now we're seeing a real market for sustainable finance really flourishing. And I'll give an example. We had a wonderful breakfast session with our clients, and, the attendance and the questions we had around sustainability, it was about 70% of the questions we got, which is really wonderful. Access to global capital markets now is linked to sustainability, and that's what's driving as well a lot of appetite, as well as the UEE hosting COP and the Year of Sustainability as well, announced by the ministry. That again is affecting a lot of businesses.
Well, in that sort of acceleration of the awareness, I mean, you have come from the UK. You worked many years. There was a gradual sense of adoption and maturity around the adoption and the economic opportunity. Here we feel like we're suddenly in a sprint. In the UK, when you worked, it was a marathon over multiple years. Here it feels like a multiple month sprint to adopt all of these sort of these standards, etc. I'm wondering, from your point of view, your thoughts on that, the concerns, pitfalls to watch out for in this sprint to ensure, not to over egg the pudding here, but to ensure that, sustainability is sustainable beyond November.
Yeah, and I think central bank and ministries have been talking about a regulatory framework for a few years, and we've been having a dialogue. So I myself have been working in that region for 6 years as well. This has been the Ministry of Climate has been established for many years before COP as well. So that dialogue is really happening at a very senior level. They've taken a very pragmatic approach as well. So we've had lots of listening post exercises as well. I think the difference now that the market's probably seeing is that the market's probably hearing about a lot of these discussions as well. And we, for example, the reason I'm on this session today is to talk around our journey and talk around our drive to sustainability more than necessarily we were a few years ago as well.
And what will be the consequence? I mean, obviously, you provide as one of the biggest banks in the UAE. I think you might have ended up Q1 as the most profitable. I can't remember. You were the most something. But nonetheless, a very important financial institution for the economy of the UAE with a very large corporate client base. What's the consequence for some of your corporate clients if they don't get on board this train in a relatively accelerated fashion, that the ability to access capital may indeed become more difficult or may indeed become more expensive because corporate X hasn't advanced its ESG and its sustainability credit?
So I think there's two elements here as well. And I think our advisory function as a bank is as much as accessing sustainable finance as not accessing sustainable finance, and that role will continue. The UAE's net zero goals are 2050, and our financial models match that as well. So, our financial products will match a glide path set out by the UAE and the net zero goals as well. What we are seeing globally as well is foreign direct investments. A lot of pension funds in Europe are looking at ESG at increasing level as well. And hence why we are having that dialogue with our clients. And a lot of them are at different stages as well. Some of them are very mature and have already reported on sustainability and already had sustainability linked products as well. Some of them have actually, and we often say, you've already done some sustainability initiatives here, and actually you can access this finance. And a lot of our clients are really surprised that actually they meet a lot of these KPIs because 50% of ESG sustainable finance is corporate governance as well, which every business in the UAE has done.
And just to sort of drill down on that point, is there consequences? Will there be consequences for those who don't quite get the seriousness that this is a paradigm shift, if you like? This is no longer, as we mentioned earlier, not to use the phrase too out of school, but greenwashing. This is now a very credible, very serious regulatory requirement that obviously also delivers economic benefits. And for those who are not getting on board, that access to credit will become problematic because it is part now of credit ratings, for example, ESG ratings.
Yeah, and I think there's a real maturity of understanding with our clients of ESG ratings as well. There's a real maturity of understanding. Now, one of my feedback mechanisms about ESG ratings are they pick up public disclosures. As you mentioned, a lot of our clients are privately had and who haven't done public disclosures. So we are explaining on that journey. We know you already do this. There's a new dialogue to be had. There's a paradigm shift. And we are seeing, more and more public disclosure around sustainability. So as you mentioned, what's seen as the industry is a lot more announcements. I think it's a reflection of what's already been done, that under the virtual iceberg as well, amongst our clients. And we're going to see that carry on and on and on. And that's also driven by COPs as well. We've seen that in Egypt. We've seen that in Glasgow. We've seen that over the last few years as well.
Well, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Really, really appreciate the insights shared today on the Middle East and Africa Forum for Sustainability Leaders podcast with Vijay Bains, Group Head of Environmental, Social and Governance at Emirates NBD Bank. Thanks so much, Vijay. Really, really insightful comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean. A great pleasure to be here.